Good afternoon. Um, Welcome to this session. Today's this session, our topic is Green New Deal for Global South. Very interesting topic. And we have somebody who is more interesting with us, Dr. David Morris, and he is the Vice Chair of UNESCAP, Sustainable Business Network. So I won't take too much time today because this topic, I think earlier when we were sitting there, you said you are the main person, because the new Green Deal, you were there from the beginning, so you have a lot to say today. For me, it's like a few years back, even when people were talking about sustainable climate change and these words, fossil fuel and all that, it was very new to us. Like for you were saying like COP28 has been 28 years, but for us and especially for Bangladeshis, I think it was 10, 15 years we came to know about climate change. It is actually happening. We realize that because of our floods and all these disasters we have, and especially the sea level rising. So the thing today we are going to ask you first, what kind of work you have been doing last few years. First, let's talk about that.
Sure, well, it's a great pleasure to talk to you about this. This is an issue that is dear to my heart. But I must admit that, like everyone, when I first heard about climate change, I wondered how seriously I should take it.
Exactly.
I wondered how it would fit in the hierarchy of needs, because first, of course, we need food and shelter, and we need peace, and there are so many things for us to focus on in the international world and in our own communities. I worked as a diplomat, as an Australian diplomat, and so I was well aware from my very early career, more than 30 years ago, of the issues of climate change. It was definitely there. We were being advised, governments were being advised by the scientists about the risks that the world was facing. These risks are long term. And so, of course, back in the 1980s and early 1990s, perhaps we were not taking it so seriously.
Yes.
But I do recall the Australian Prime Minister, Bob Hawke, 3 decades ago, doing an address to the nation, talking about what a crisis the climate change was going to bring in the future and how we needed to adapt. So I, like many people, didn't really take it all that seriously many years ago. But yes, we are now approaching soon COP28.
Yes.
And so 28 sessions of world leaders getting together to try and shift our economies, our way of thinking, our way of working and living to a more sustainable way so that we can slow this climate change. We probably can't stop it. In fact, we know we can't stop it because we're already seeing the effects of climate change.
Yes.
But the question is, can we slow it down, and can we make sure that the global temperature rise from the Industrial Revolution to the middle of this century, if we can keep it below about a 1.5 degree increase, then it will be manageable, hopefully. Now, when I say manageable, there will still be more natural disasters. There will still be food security problems. There will still be rising sea levels. But it will be minimal compared with the catastrophic problems that the world will face by the end of this century if the global temperature goes above 1.5 to 2, above 2 degrees. Now, we're tracking at the moment at 3 degrees.
Wow.
So we are really heading towards disaster by the end of this century. Now, that might seem a long way away, but actually, if you're a young person today, and I hope there are some young people watching us, if you're a young person today, the end of the century is not impossible to think about it. And actually, we have a responsibility to think about the state of our world, because if by the end of the century we see a 3% increase in global temperatures, then the natural disasters are going to be catastrophic in this part of the world, in South Asia, in my part of the world, in the Pacific, not just my home country of Australia, but the Pacific Island countries that I care about deeply. I represented them in China for a few years ago, as a trade and investment commissioner for the Pacific Islands Forum. And, you know, I talked to many leaders in the Pacific Island countries, and they told me, sometimes with tears in their eyes, about islands already disappearing, about their cultures already under threat, unique cultures, small countries, very different from this one, of course, but small population countries, but cultures that actually face extinction.
Yes.
If we head towards that 3-degree shift. If we see the sea rising by several metres, not only will this destroy our coastal cities all over the Asian Pacific, but for some of those Pacific islands, they will cease to exist. So it's a pretty serious crisis we really need to be addressing.
Right. You were talking about the Green New Deal. Let's talk about that because we were thinking like we are going to transition in 100% clean energy in 10 years. Is it possible actually?
Well, it's a big challenge, and I should say, just to correct the record, that I have just completed my period as Vice President of the SCAP Sustainable Business Network. But while I was in that role for the last 4 years, working with businesses across the Asia Pacific, we were developing this, and I was doing this with others, it wasn't just me, but a team of us developed this idea of an Asia Pacific Green Deal. And in particular, we were talking with businesses because I think governments are starting to adapt and governments are developing.
But the young people, they don't feel that. And their voices, actually, we are listening to their voices, not the government's voices. That's the thing.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's not enough, but equally government alone isn't enough either.
That's true.
Our idea was in developing a Green Deal, really a Green Deal needs to involve the business community as well, because the business community needs to see not just the urgency, but also the benefits. So from any risk, from any crisis, you know, there's an old Chinese saying, in crisis there is opportunity. And in this crisis, we have to think now, can we shift our economies to renewable energy, to renewable transport, to sustainable infrastructure?
Yes.
Can we do sustainable tourism? You know, can we do sustainable shipping, aviation? All of these
green production, you know, in Bangladesh, in RNG, they're doing green production, and that's something so new for us.
That's right. Yeah. And so it has to be, the business people running these businesses have to see that it's realistic, and they have to see that it's affordable and that they can still make profit.
So they have to work with the government.
That's right. So we need a partnership approach here. And the good news is that actually it is all possible. It is possible to do. The economists, the innovations that people have been working on in every sector of the economy are demonstrating cases of sustainable models already. And certainly in energy, your question started there, and I think it's a good place to start because energy is a big contributor to climate change. And it's certainly now becoming possible to shift to renewable energy. It's now becoming cost effective. The technology now of renewable energy is actually cost effective. It is actually cheaper.
But it's strange that the other day I was watching a documentary on Elon Musk when he invented the electric cars. Nobody was buying it because it was so expensive. So it has to be cost effective, otherwise people won't buy.
It does. And that's where you need the partnership, because it probably will be the case that we are going to need to have subsidies, and so this will always.
Yeah, and it has subsidies. In Canada, they're selling. They're giving a lot of, you know, those subsidies and lot of facilities. Just buy these cars, you know, something like that.
That's right. And one of the criticisms that you hear sometimes in Europe, which used to have a solar panel industry, that they lost it because the Chinese solar panel industry became so efficient, so much lower cost. So one of the criticisms you hear in Europe is, well, China was subsidizing its solar panel industry. And to some extent that's right, because in fact every country, to some level, subsidizes industries.
It has to.
In fact, most countries subsidize fossil fuel industries. Massive, in fact, very massive subsidies for the fossil fuel industries. So what we have to think through as a global community is actually, is it acceptable then to have some level of subsidy to shift us to a more sustainable model? If we're facing this threat, if it's going to move our economies to a more sustainable base, basis, and if the technology is cost effective. I mean, obviously we
It has to,
we
yeah.
have to do this in a cost effective way, and this is especially an issue for the global south, because in the developing world, the number one priority has to be development, of course, and so you don't want to add a whole lot of extra costs that are not going to be covered.
And creating jobs, that too has to be there.
Absolutely,
yes,
absolutely.
yes.
So these are complicated issues, but I think the good news is that actually the technology is arriving. The global markets are demanding sustainable products. So if you're a business person, your customers want sustainable products. You now can use renewable energy in large parts of the world, and where you can't, there is a lot of investment going on at the moment, funded by international development banks and others to build renewable power. There is sustainable transport being developed all over the world. And so our industries are in this process. We're in an early stage, but I think over the next decade or two, before we get to mid-century, we will see a shift in production towards a much more sustainable system.
So it has to be a long-term plan. It cannot be just a short for a few years. You know, it has to have a long planning and next 20 years, 30 years, 40 years planning.
It does. So it's a big process, and for the developed economies, they really need to be doing this fast because they can afford to do it fast.
That's the problem. That is the problem there.
Politically, though, it's unpopular. It's difficult to sell to electorates in democracies that we should have some pain in order to be safer in the future. It's a difficult argument. However, it's not an impossible argument. I mean, we see leaders arguing that we need to fund our military defence, for example, and every country has a right to self-defence, and so we put a large proportion of our national budget, usually about 2% in most countries, into defence.
It's
maybe we need to have the same mindset.
Exactly.
We need to do this. We need to make this change. It's going to have some cost, but we need to do it obviously in a socially responsible way as well as an environmentally responsible way. And this is what ESG is all about. It's what these principles that have been developed about economic and social and governance principles that can help businesses and governments to devise the strategies to make this transition. And so when we hear this acronym ESG, that's what it's about. It's about trying to balance our social needs and our economic needs with the sustainable principles. And it's possible to do. The world leaders agreed to do this.
But in every COP meeting, we see like they are promising a lot of things and it doesn't fulfill in the later on. It is not implemented.
Yes.
So what can we do there?
Yeah, look, it's been too slow. It has been too slow. The good news is this year, finally, the $100 billion target that was set for the advanced economies, the developed economies, to assist the global south with the green transition.
Yes.
The good news is this year it looks like that will finally be achieved. We'll finally get to the 100 billion annual investment in the global south. It's taken many years to get to that. It was promised, and
that's true.
There's been
That's
a lot
true.
of frustration.
Yeah.
But I think we should also celebrate when we achieve a target.
Absolutely,
so
absolutely.
Yes. Let's
Yes.
celebrate it and let's make sure that we can keep that going, because we need a lot of support from the advanced. I call them advanced economies. It's perhaps a better word is the developed economies. The richer world has a responsibility, because at the end of the day, what has caused this problem has been the process of industrialization. It's been a 200-year project. We didn't know 200 years ago that industrialization was going to heat the planet, but we have known now for more than a generation, and it has been those rich countries, of course, that have benefited from industrialization. We want the South to benefit from development as well, but that
absolutely
development now must be sustainable. We must do it with electrification that is renewable power. We must do it with sustainable production. And I think we can. I really do think we can. And I think the more that business and government works together, we just simply must do it.
Right. I think we are just going to end, going to have the last question with you. What do you think is the future, especially with our developing country and the developed country? What is the future, you think?
I think it's
and what should we think in the future? Like, what should we do?
always difficult to predict the future. You know,
But it's one world. We have to save the world. So what should we do?
It is one Earth. And so as we develop these new technologies, we really ought to be thinking about their application globally. We really ought to be thinking about agreed standards and rules. And
so that means a lot of cooperation with other countries.
It does.
Yes.
It means we really do need the global system to be working. This is a fundamental global priority. We hear this from the UN Secretary General all the time.
All the time, yes.
Actually, he doesn't really cut through in the media because the media is always about conflict and problems of the day. Understandably, that's more interesting for people to watch on the TV or to watch on their phones. But actually, I think the future will bring us and must bring us a more effective system of global governance around these issues of new technologies and the new industries as they develop. We've done it in the past. The good news is we have done this. Even in the height of the Cold War, when the US and the Soviet Union...
Yeah, that time we...
And we had...
Yes.
And we also had the non-aligned movement. We had a world that looked like it wasn't cooperating. But actually, you know, we did. We developed nuclear safety standards, the International Atomic Energy Agency. We developed civil aviation.
And this is a universal problem. This is not like only one country is suffering.
Absolutely. So just like in the heat of the Cold War, we could still get on an aeroplane and fly across borders, and we could land in Moscow or we could land in New York or anywhere safely, knowing that the same rules applied, the same standards applied.
Absolutely.
To aviation. We had trust in international rules, even though we knew we had other tensions. So I think we need the same approach to climate change. We need to find a global cooperative solution. And
maybe if the government can't do, the young generation is going to force us to do.
If you talk to any young person, talk to any 15-year-old or 25-year-old,
they are more aware.
They've got this. They know this is the priority. They know that even the day-to-day necessities of food and shelter and peace rely upon addressing climate change.
Exactly.
Because if we don't address climate change, we will be heading to conflict. We will be heading to food security crises, and this will lead to all kinds of economic and social problems. So young people know this.
Yes.
They've got it. They really need to take more leadership on this, I think.
True.
Always encourage young people. You can be the leaders on this issue because this is your issue.
Absolutely. They know more than us, actually. Yeah, and they're more concerned, obviously, for the reason they are going to be here. Right. Maybe we are not going to be here. So thank you so much. I wish we could talk more about this because you have such knowledge about this. But the thing is, we should continue talking about it, you know. Sometimes we get frustrated and we say, we have been talking about this and nobody is listening. But you keep on talking, you know. It has to be in everybody's mind. So that's actually works. Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for coming to Bangladesh and joining this conference. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the sessions. And thank you again.
I must say that the people of Bangladesh are so kind and generous and welcoming.
This is your first visit.
My second visit. But
okay, wonderful.
It's been a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Thank you.